Hi, Ben. Nice to meet
Hello,
you.
nice to meet you too. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time. For the people watching, we're going to be talking about toxic masculinity and, more importantly, its effect on men's mental health. So, you have won the Diana Award in 2019 for your work on teenagers' mental health. Why is it such an important issue for you?
Um, for a number of reasons. I mean, firstly, I had the very unfortunate experience of losing my younger brother a few years ago to suicide when he was just 15. So I know firsthand that the impact that it has on people and people's lives. So that really made me want to kind of prevent that from happening from anyone else. But also, through my work and through what I see, and like every day, I get so many people message me and talk about their own experiences and talk about their own problems and what's going on in their life. And it's just like the scale of the devastation, the scale of the crisis is enormous. And until you start like learning about that, until you start actually seeing the scale, it's impossible to even understand quite how many people are affected by this.
So, do you think toxic masculinity is one of the key factors then for affecting men's mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think toxic masculinity is a phrase that some people, it's a bit like Marmite, isn't it? You say toxic masculinity and some people are like, oh, we can't say that, right?
Mm.
Because people have this opinion of it. The way I think toxic masculinity plays into this and how I kind of define toxic masculinity is anything that's posed as being masculine that's damaging to people. So the way I see it with mental health, we've got a huge problem in this country, as with a number of countries, in that men are told that they have to be strong and provide and be like emotionless people. Well, that's just it's a total lie, and that is toxic masculinity, or a stem of toxic masculinity. And we see this. We see the suicide rates. 75% of suicides are male.
Mm-hmm.
They're not reaching support. They're not reaching out. So toxic masculinity has a huge amount to answer for in terms of not allowing or encouraging men to actually be open about their feelings, which of course we know is absolutely fine and actually incredibly strong to talk about your feelings. But that toxic masculinity, that education from a young age that men can't cry and you've got to be strong, you've got to be, you've got to hit the rugby field and batter each other and be stronger and hit the gym and get the girls. That's just such a one-sided way of looking at masculinity, and it has been really damaging.
What's really interesting is I moved from a girls' school to a boys' school, and the way they talk about mental health is very different in both schools. In girls' schools, it's much more like gentle and calm, and in boys' schools, they get like hit with it. And it's it's really interesting to see the difference in genders, and not good
Mm,
at all, obviously.
no.
But the target audience changing does have a real impact, and I don't think enough people realize that. So why did you start your two initiatives?
Yeah, so I mean, the first sort of initiative that we did was very much just a reaction to the grief and the situation I've been put in. Basically, when my brother died, so many people in my local community reached out to me, and they were talking about their own stories and their own situations. And I just remember thinking, how can it be that these people in my school didn't want to talk about life-changing things? So the first initiative, which was Project Walk Talk, was basically just let's get everyone outside and let's just tackle this all together. We'll talk about it, we'll raise some money and have a good time. We'll dress in bright pink while we do it. So that was kind of basically just me. That was the first step, really. That was just I wanted to do something. And we finished that walk and we had 15 grand. We got a letter from the Prime Minister, and we were on this adrenaline high of being able to actually help and change people's lives. And we were like, what can we do now? What can we do next? And I
Mm.
had a conversation with a teacher who told me that at no point during their teacher training do teachers receive anything on mental health whatsoever. And to me, that just seemed wrong because, I mean, the most likely way a boy is going to die in a classroom is through suicide. And yet teachers are taught how to use an EpiPen, but not how to use, or not how to spot the signs that someone's about to take their own life. And that to me just made no sense. So that's why I started a petition to government to make mental health first aid a compulsory part of teacher training, which apparently a few people agreed with because we've got 310,000 signatures now, which is just
Wait.
unreal. Yeah.
That's amazing. How far is it? Is it still going? The momentum?
So this is so basically last year,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much this time last year, I met the Prime Minister at an event, and I got to speak to him on camera. And I just remember sitting down, I was speaking to him, and halfway through this interview, I just went, when am I ever going to be able to speak to a Prime Minister on camera ever again? I'm just going to shoot my shot. And I just cornered him with the petition. I was like, do you want to support it? Do you think that's the right thing to do? And he looked around at his advisors, and then it was like, yeah, that's such a good idea. And then basically after that conversation, I went to his secretary, and I was like, what do we do now? You know, we can't just leave it there. What happens now? Anyway, 2 days later, I was at Downing Street, and the Prime Minister accepted the signatures outside the door in front of the press, went inside, had a conversation with him and all the advisors, and that's all great, but nothing's happened, and that's been a year. And it was very much a blank, empty promise, and it was just a media show. So the time we took the petition in, it had 210,000 signatures. It now has 100,000 more. And it's basically just a case of, we're not going anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
You might have ticked your box in getting the media attention, but we're not going anywhere. And we're just going to grow and grow and grow and get more support, more support, more support. And they're going to have to listen to us, because I do genuinely believe this is the first step at creating some really massive change. And it's only one step, but it's the first step.
That is really important. And especially for us as teenagers to see someone cares about our mental health that much is really impactful. And we have mental health first aiders at our school. We literally just started this year, and I do think that might be a result of your work. So you are changing. You are changing some stuff.
Oh, that's really nice. It is awesome actually to hear about schools that have done stuff because like all of what I do is online, mostly, like it's getting online signatures. So actually get a phone call from a school being like, we've just got all of our staff trained. It's really exciting because it's like actually happening. It's happening. Yeah. And you know what? We don't need the government to turn around and tell us to do it. We can just do it ourselves. So for schools to actually go and get teachers trained is such an amazing thing.
Other than getting all the teachers trained, what would you have them do?
So I said it was the first step, getting teachers trained, and only because the end goal is, I believe, everyone should be taught about mental health. Like, it should just be something that everyone's taught about. I was on an interview the other day with someone, and I asked them, when was the first time you heard the words mental health? And he was 25. 25 at a job, and that was the first time he heard the words mental health. Like, how can that possibly be how we approach this? The biggest killer of men under 45. How can we leave it until someone's 25 to even have a conversation about it? It's ridiculous. And the way I see it, education sector in the UK is failing millions of students every year because they're not preparing people for life. You know, the way I see it, education is there, and the education system is there to prepare people for life. And if they're neglecting to address issues that are going to directly affect people's lives, then they are not succeeding in that goal, and they are failing people. So until we see mental health education as for every student, then I don't believe we're doing right by anyone. But that does start with training teachers, because they have to obviously know how to teach it, and they have to understand the topic themselves, which currently they don't.
Do you think the mental health training then for women and men, like when you talk to them, do you see their levels of awareness being very different?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because what's really interesting is a lot of people have an awareness around mental health. They know what it is, or they know that it exists, but no one really has an understanding. And I think what this training helps is the understanding of going, it's not just someone feeling sad, you know, this is an actual chemical imbalance of the brain. Just like going for a run releases endorphins, which makes you feel happy. Having a mental health condition means you have less of stuff. You have a chemical imbalance. There's an actual thing happening rather than just having an emotion. And to actually be able to understand that it's not just someone feeling sad, and actually understand that it's an actual problem, can just help someone understand it. But then also in that training, you get ways of helping people. You get the toolkit that you can then use day to day in spotting when someone might need a helping hand, and actually ways that you can approach it. mental health first aid is so good, that course. I haven't actually done it, but the teachers that I know, I haven't had time. I haven't had time, which says a lot about my last 3 years. The teachers I've spoken to that have gone on this training and have come back to school, and they've gone, I can't do this on my own, and had to get other staff involved, because they've suddenly, just like what happened to me, they've suddenly realized, wow, this is huge, this problem. Because I tell you what, every single student in every school in the UK should have access to a mental health first aid trained teacher or a mental health professional within their school. And I reckon if there wasn't a stigma, then every student in the country would have some sort of conversation with someone like that at some point. We all need them.
Yeah. But we mentioned the stigma, and I was going to elaborate on that, because it's there for some reason, and it's huge, and it's even bigger around guys than it is around girls. And you being a guy and doing all this stuff for mental health, it makes it even more amazing. But why, how did you break that stigma?
I don't think I did. It's weird. So obviously the stigma exists, and to be honest with you, the stigma even exists with me, because there are certain situations I've been in where I've subconsciously judged a situation before I've even met a person. I've had these, especially when I've been talking to people that are, that have been some put in prison for stuff they've done during psychotic episodes. I've had almost like a judgment before I've met them. And that, I think, is this stigma where we've been taught that these people are going to be crazy and aggressive and all of this stuff. So I think the stigma is very, very hard to get rid of. In terms of just mental health and the sort of what I'm going to call the mild to moderate mental health issues, like depression and anxiety, mild depression and anxiety, that we see a lot of the time in schools, there's a stigma that goes about that those people are weak. And that's really difficult to overcome, because a lot of time people will support these initiatives and go, yeah, we need to talk about mental health, but in the back of their mind they still think you have to kind of be weak to suffer with this sort of stuff. And getting over that's very, very hard. But I think one thing we can all do is share our own stories, because I tell you what, it's so easy to bottle things up and not say anything. It's the easiest thing in the world not to say anything, but to actually have the guts and the courage to actually disclose something like that and talk about something like that is so brave. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very difficult, but I don't know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get rid of this stigma, because it's damaging a lot of people and preventing a lot of people from talking about this.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that it's getting better for our generation than it was the previous generation?
Yes and no. Often I think we're making really good progress, and then I'll go somewhere or I'll meet someone or I'll be in a situation that just shocks me at how far we still need to come. A lot of the time there are very, very, we're making progress, put it that way. I mean, 30 years ago it was illegal to take your own life. Now it's not. And our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they have the opinion that mental health is weakness, and it's almost illegal to try and take your own life still. We generally, as a younger generation, don't believe that. However, we are kind of in a transition phase, I think, where although we might not outwardly have this stigma, open stigma, like actually being open about the fact that you think it's weak, we have a sort of subconscious stigma in this generation. But we are in a transition, which is why I think it's so important now that we have this massive change and this landslide change, which I'm calling for, because if we don't do something major, then I don't think we're going to flip that balance. And I think we are very, very close to producing a generation that does take this seriously and is comfortable talking about it. But if we don't do something big and actually start educating and actually start training our teachers and teaching our students, I fear that we won't make that progress as quickly as we need to.
How can we as individuals help with that?
Sharing stories. You know, there's so much power in just speaking up about what you've been through. And it takes, like I said, it takes a lot of courage, but the number of people that I've met that have gone to get support just because I've said this online, you know, the number of people that I've met that have gone to see a counsellor for the first time ever and got onto a road to recovery just because they've heard someone else talking about it and talking about their own stories is absolutely incredible. There's a lot to be said for sort of creating a sort of role model in yourself, and just talking about what you've been through and being open is so infectious. People do. We're human beings. We copy, you know. And if we see someone's shared something, and we've seen that they're able to get through it and they're able to stand there, and we're in that position, and we've seen them on the other side of the tunnel, if you like, then it's infectious. It makes people want to go and get help. So if we can all start being more open about our struggles, because let's be honest, we all struggle. We all hide there behind Instagram, being like, oh, I had a wonderful day today, which you haven't. You've just been lying in bed posting old photos from holidays. If we can all be a little bit more open, a little bit more transparent with our lives, I think that in itself would be a fantastic help to trying to break the stigma and allowing people access to support.
Those really good points. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm afraid we're gonna have to leave it there. But wow, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Take all
It's
of
been
that
great talking to you.